welcome everyone. Thank you for coming this evening, and welcome Coco. Coco is zooming in from her studio today. Coco Crampton is a sculptor, and she studied at the Royal Academy, and her show entitled Bonne Bouche was shown here at the Cut in 2010. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Coco, thank you for coming this evening, and I thought we could start by me asking you if you'd like to share some of your early influences, share kind of the start of your journey. Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, hello. So I studied painting at Norwich School of Art and Design, and I was there. I graduated in 2005, and I think it was during my third year of the degree. I was asked if I would move my studio into the sculpture department, not to study sculpture, but to because they had sort of restrictions on space in the painting department. So I moved my studio over there, and I think during my third year, I kind of started to think more sculpturally as a result. And it was also during that year that I took a trip to France and visited the atelier of Constantin Brancusi, which is reconstructed outside the Pompidou Centre, in a building designed by Renzo Piano. And I think it was already sort of beginning to think more sculpturally and being interested in his work, but also this particular kind of viewing of his work in this building, because you can kind of walk around basically the studio has been reconstructed in the center of the space, but it's kind of in a vitrine-like space. So you walk around the edges of it, viewing it through glass, but you can't actually enter it. So it's this kind of staged environment, which feels, there are materials and sculptures, sort of tools, kind of in amongst each other. And there's a feeling that maybe the artist has just left the room and could re-enter again at any moment. So I think it was that, seeing that exhibition at that particular time in my development, that sort of then maybe led me to a more sculptural practice. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that your work is incredibly playful, and you're very playful with the materials that you use, and play seems quite central to your work. I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the role of play and using playfulness in your work as a tool for communication.
Yeah, I think maybe at this point we've got some images that we could look at. So
yes, please.
Yeah, there's the first group of images are of an exhibition that I had in 2007. So it was a couple of years after graduating from Norwich, and it was the first solo exhibition that I'd had in a gallery in Norwich called Outpost Gallery. So if we just have a look at some of these, this is the gallery space. It's an old skittle alley, and on Wensum Street in Norwich. And so this exhibition was called Swing. And at the time, I suppose, yeah, my approach to the exhibition sort of, I had a familiarity with the space already. I'd kind of been working on the committee of the gallery and sort of spent quite a lot of time in the space. So I think that familiarity and sort of being thinking how I wanted the works to kind of to be positioned within the space. So my first thought was to bring a tree into the center of the gallery, and so that when you entered the space, your eyes were drawn up to the apex, and you're kind of made more aware of the architecture of the space. And similarly with the piece there on the left, which is a hexagonal sculpture which hangs on one of the I-beams. I kind of wanted to bring the architecture kind of into the exhibition, sort of make it part of the overall work. And I think that's a kind of an example maybe of a slightly playful approach to thinking about the work. And this particular exhibition, I'd been thinking a lot about green spaces in the urban environment and how they're sort of thinking about the social, physical and environmental benefits of green spaces, and how they can be places that we tend to congregate and where communal activities take place. So I kind of wanted the tree to be in the center of the space, so that maybe people would circulate around it and maybe congregate there in the middle of the gallery.
Was Golden Girl is the name of the piece hanging from the beam. Is this its first viewing? Was it made specifically for this exhibition?
Yeah, it was made for this exhibition originally, and it's kind of made in situ in a way, because there's another image of it a bit further along. Yeah, so it hangs from this I-beam, so it kind of has to be installed on site. And the name of the exhibition kind of came from that sculpture. So the exhibition was called Swing. And so this is kind of the view as you enter the space, more or less. The entrance is kind of here. And so I kind of wanted to position the works in such a way that people would kind of maybe walk in a sort of circular way around the gallery. And so I'd been thinking about, fairgrounds and playgrounds, play parks, spaces, social spaces. So a lot of the works kind of maybe reference, for example, the quilt here is, it's an 8-foot by 8-foot hand-sewn quilt, and it references the communal sort of activity of quilt making, or what was once perhaps more traditionally a communal activity, and it's quite a low level on the ground, which maybe suggests that you could sit upon it and gather around it. And this piece is kind of like a screen-like piece, and it's called Passion Wagon. And the way it's made is made from wood, and the spokes are kind of chamfered. So this piece was to kind of perhaps reference fairground design, and perhaps the community of people that kind of fairground communities. And then these two, well, there are 3 sculptures here with the lights in them, are called donkey rides. And these these are reinterpretations of a furniture designed by Ernest Race, which is called the Penguin Donkey. And it was a bookcase that he designed for Isocon furniture. And it's specifically made to house Penguin paperback books. Mm. So the original design has shelves running through here. And Ernest Race made the bookcase in, I think it was in the early 60s, but it was actually, his design was actually itself a reinterpretation of an original design by Egon Rees. So we're talking about playfulness and maybe an example, these examples. This piece sort of resembles some piece of playground furniture. It's called Shanks's Pony. And so the idea of sort of having to go by foot. So this sort of rocking sculpture is a bit like a rocking horse without the horse. So the rocker is the idea that perhaps if you walked into this piece accidentally or on purpose, it would gently rock in response. So I think I'm quite interested in the idea of encounter when I think about making sculpture and how people are going to not just to view it, but in this case maybe to have some sort of interaction with it. And perhaps this also comes back round to talking about Brancusi's studio and this kind of slight frustration at sort of being able to view it from all angles, but not actually being able to enter the space and be sort of immersed in it.
We talk about space and your artwork and inhabiting space. And just wondering if the different spaces that your artworks inhabit influence the artworks themselves or change them at all.
Yeah, I think the works are very responsive to space, to the site that they're displayed in. I've been quite fortunate over the years to perhaps, I think I was saying about Outpost Gallery and having this familiarity with the space before I exhibited in it. And there've been other occasions where I think with the cut as well, you know, I sort of knew the space quite well before I showed in it. And I think therefore the works became quite responsive in a way. There are other examples of works, as you see here, that are perhaps reconfigured in different spaces. So Wallflower is the name of the quilted piece, which we saw in the first images of Outpost, and here it's in Norwich Castle Museum Gallery, and Shanks's Pony is positioned on top of it. So I think I quite often reconfigure works in ways like this, bring them into sort of different juxtapositions. So again, Wallflower, the quilted piece here, is displayed with an addition of sculptures resting on top of it. And so then there's a close-up image here of the piece in the cut.
It works so well there. I love. And
then I think the other way in which maybe, thank you. I think the other way that maybe I respond to space is not necessarily kind of maybe the work doesn't respond directly. It's not, for example, these sculptures aren't actually they're sculptures that or reinterpretations again of the original lamps that I saw were in Charleston House. So in Charleston House in Sussex, there are a number of lampshades that were made, quite a lot of them by Quentin Bell. They hang around the house, and they're all these kind of colander-like shapes with handles and lots of holes, and often just with a single light bulb hanging from them. So in this case, I went to the house on a visit, and I had a guided tour, and I think we were in the dining room, and we were being told about all the people that had who'd come to Charleston House over the years for dinner parties and sat around the table underneath these lampshades. And this sort of made me think about all the interesting conversations and that occurred beneath this lampshade, and how much it would have witnessed over the years. And so I then sort of thought about making my own sort of versions of these lampshades, but then they recontextualized and have an edition here of neon light. And so these were shown in a gallery in London in 2015. But then subsequently, Charleston House learned about them and invited me to show them back at Charleston House again. So it's quite a nice story of kind of
and are they still there, your lampshades?
So they're not actually in the house, they're in the barn, which is just outside the house. It's been converted recently into a cafe dining area. So it's called the Threshing Barn. It was the former Threshing Barn at the house, and so they're currently installed here. And at the time of installing them, Charleston Trust also asked me if I'd like to make a table to go beneath them, which kind of echoes the table in the dining room in the house.
This is
it's a very
fantastic.
Similar size.
I love the
so you can go
underneath the table. You can see the amazing legs, which are clusters of horseshoes. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they're all, you can go and eat cake at this table if you like next time you're at Charleston House. So yeah, I think that's I'd never envisaged these lampshades ever kind of finding their way to the house. So it's really it's special to have them there.
I think here we were wanted to ask you about colour and your colour palette or palettes. Your earlier work kind of hints towards kind of amusement parks, fairgrounds, and leisure beaches. And I think colour plays an interesting role in your work. You talk about being very colour inclusive, and I think that your choices of colour are quite particular, not necessarily just for the aesthetic, but for other reasons. Could you tell us a bit about the role that colour plays in your work?
So this is an example of a very colourful piece. This is another of the rocking sculptures that I mentioned earlier. I have a number of different approaches to colour, really. I don't sort of think of having a particular palette that I work with. I'm quite, as you say, sort of quite inclusive and open about how I use it. And so, for example, I have been making sculptures from wood that are painted with these faux effects. So this piece has a combination of black marble, yellow marble, tortoiseshell, malachite, lapis lazuli, porphyry. So it's quite a kind of a jumble of different faux effects. So these are all perhaps derived from nature, but have kind of been exaggerated and accentuated and brought together in this way. And perhaps this is another piece which has a malachite backrest and a lapis lazuli seat. But then currently I'm working a lot with ceramics, and so the way that I think about colour is very different, because it's often dependent on what I can achieve with the type of firing that I'm doing or the type of clay that I'm using. So it's a very different sort of approach. Here's an example of a recent ceramic sculpture, and yeah, I think that sort of it's perhaps just not as much control in the way that I work with colour in ceramics, but that's something that I quite enjoy in a way, is perhaps setting yourself a little bit of a restriction and then seeing what you can kind of, how far you can take it. And then another way that I maybe work with colour is perhaps because of a particular material I've chosen to use for a number of different associations that it has, and colour is perhaps just one of them. So I've made a series of sculptures using denim. These two pieces are made from a combination of denim and tin cans, and it's something that I came across in a sort of 60s magazine about kind of handcrafts and things that you can make around the home. And this was something that you could do using old tin cans and scraps of denim. So it's kind of like a stool that you can sit on. And I guess the idea of convenience in tinned food, and the idea of kind of the convenience of jeans, and the history of jeans, and their association to perhaps liberation and freedom, and kind of the fact that they're perhaps a genderless material, and quite an accessible material. It's something that I was interested in when I was making these. So yeah, as I say, this the way that colour comes into the work can sometimes be as a result of a particular way of thinking about a material, and then the colour is perhaps an afterthought, or it can be the first thing I think about. So yeah, it's quite varied.
Thank you. I think the denim continues into the next slide, and I really like this exhibition. It's an exhibition that you did at the Minories, and it's fascinating the way that you use you kind of disrupt the space. I feel that there's kind of a slight friction or tension in some of the installations that you do. There seem to be kind of familiar parts, and then you'll see that something is slightly off. It makes it really interesting to look at and think about. Could you take us through your exhibition at the Minories and tell us a bit about the pieces there?
Yeah, so the Minories is gallery space that's kind of spread between 3 main rooms. And I think when I was asked to show that, I was trying to think about how to do an exhibition that was kind of could be sort of a single statement across these 3 spaces, because this first space that we're looking at now has these sort of interior features of the fireplace and the radiator, and then this room, for example, had a very dark floor and these panelled walls. And then the third room has these 2 pillars in the middle, and then this stepped area over here. So I just felt that I wanted to do something across the 3 spaces that could kind of, although the spaces are interconnected, they can also feel a little bit separate from one another. So I decided to work with these dining units. And this was in 2015, and it was just after graduating from the Royal Academy schools. And it was the first solo show that I'd had after graduating. And at the Royal Academy, I'd been, in my final year there, I'd been doing a lot of welding and making my own sort of steel frameworks that kind of resembled furniture forms. And so I think this idea of using a ready-made object, as these dining units are, kind of appealed to me as a complete sort of, not a complete contrast, because they're very similar material and method of construction to what I had been doing myself at the Royal Academy. But it was just, I'd just wanted this feeling of using something that already had a kind of history within it, and something that was very recognizable and sort of had a universal feel to it, that kind of, or a generic kind of sense. So they're all, I think there are 6 units in total, and they've all kind of been disrupted in slightly different ways. So the first, I think I should also say that the title of the exhibition was also in 3 parts. So I was thinking about the fact that there were these 3 different rooms, and so I wanted the title to be sort of read in three different sort of parts. So it's quite a long title. I might just take a drink of water before I...
I'll join you.
So you ready? No, so the title is was Handles on Romance and Other Girls, Also Common Tongue. And so I was kind of thinking about this particular room. It's as though a sort of group dining experience or occasion has just occurred or is about to occur, but the fact that all the seats are the same colour and the table is in this kind of quite a long extended table gave a sense of sort of a gathering of many people, whereas the next space was slightly more intimate, and perhaps the fact that the seats are kind of positioned as they are and that they're kind of facing one another almost, or like this idea that maybe there's 4 friends who like to kind of do the same things and eat the same food and maybe get together regularly, and you know, kind is sort of thinking about the different dining scenarios that there can be. The next room is more sort of these booths here are more private because they have these walls, partitions, and so there's maybe slightly more romantic feel about this kind of dining setup. Yeah, so
thank you. There's a really nice contrast in this exhibition between kind of the utility furniture, mass-produced, and the smaller objects there. So you can see there's are they ceramics on the table? And I think
yeah, there's a.
Yeah, I was going to say. Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to, yeah, there are a few ceramics and some denim, again, some denim tin cans.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, your work kind of highlights how things are produced, maybe the speed at which things are produced. And it's interesting that you have the kind of handmade side by side with the utility mass-produced objects. Can you tell us about yeah, how your kind of where your interest lies in that, and how you like to play with the hierarchy of objects in your installations?
Yeah, I think it's through the juxtaposition of the handmade and the mass-produced, or the artificial or organic, or different types of processes that are involved in the work, that I guess by bringing these things kind of towards each other, it perhaps sort of questions the kind of our values of the way that we value these things. I think perhaps these sculptures that I showed in the cut in 2010 are a good example as well of this kind of bringing together of a very kind of handmade objects. So the chairs are all made using mortise and tenon joinery, and the cushion pads are all quilted, and the fabrics are all hand screen printed. So it's kind of almost every single kind of aspect of that chair has been touched by the hand and kind of had some sort of craft process involved in it. Whereas it's then resting on these breeze blocks, which are just a kind of a building material that I've just brought in to and not done anything to them. So they're yeah, I think I quite enjoy that contrast, and I kind of find value in the breeze blocks as well. So I like the modular element of them, and the I think similarly with the dining units, they're very kind of there's something about using the same unit repetitively throughout the exhibition, and kind of but doing something different to it in each sculpture. And maybe just sort of exploring its potentials and possibilities.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking us through that exhibition and through your work. I guess the last question is to ask, what does the future hold, and what are you currently working on, and where is your work going now?
So just this week, I've got an exhibition which is currently on, and it's just reopened. So it originally opened in October last year, and has been on hold, as a lot of things have been. But now, glad to say it's just reopened this week, and that'll be running until the end of May. So that's at Bonne Bouche Gallery in London. And this exhibition sort of includes quite a number of ceramic sculptures, and I feel like these are perhaps kind of, yeah, these are sort of the most recent works that I've been making, and so yeah, that's exciting, and so hopefully the future will hold a few, yeah, just continuing to explore this new body of work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Coco. Thank you so much. And we'll just end on just asking your relationship with Suffolk, really, and the cut itself. I know you had your exhibition here in 2010, and yeah, just to ask you about that.
Yeah, so so the exhibition was in 2010, and this was just after I finished a residency in Hull at the School of Art and Design there. And during that residency, I'd been sort of conceiving this chair that we can see in this image. And so I think having the exhibition at the Cut was a really good, it was really good timing for me, because it was, I just moved back to Norfolk, having spent 2 years in Yorkshire, and I really had these works that I wanted to show, and also a number of works, I guess, from the last sort of between 2005 2010, which then came together again in this in the gallery at the Cut, and then it was just after showing here that I then applied to study at the Royal Academy. So I think having this exhibition and the documentation from it, and kind of the experience of this having a solo exhibition was really came at quite an important time for me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for taking us through your work. That's wonderful. It's been absolutely fascinating, and really, really enjoyed. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, you can either write them in the chat, or you can ask a question by raising your hand. I have a question. What advice would you give an artist starting out?
What advice would I give an artist starting out? Well, I think I started out, I suppose, with the fact, I think of myself like educationally, I started with a foundation course before I went on to any other, before I kind of went on to do a BA. And so the foundation course was really, I mean, it was really important for me, because it kind of gave me, an insight into lots of different approaches to making art. So kind of introduced you to different, introduced you to textiles and to painting, sculpture, graphics, and I think it was through sort of, I guess from that, I just sort of thought, I think at an early stage, not to restrict yourself, and to sort of try lots of different things, and then, because I mean, yeah, I started off studying painting and kind of have found myself making objects, and have been through lots of different kind of processes along the way. So I think, yeah, maybe just try to be open-minded, and and yeah, try lots of different things before narrowing down. I think I often have lots of different things going on at the same time, and they perhaps come together at quite a late stage. So, for example, there was an image that we skipped over there, but it was of a knitted garment and or a knitted figure. And so sometimes I'll be working on something using quite a slow process, like the knitting was sort of all hand knitting, and it takes quite a long time. So yeah, sometimes I'm working on a very slow process, but on the other hand, I might be doing something else, like sometimes ceramics can be quite a fast process. And then at a certain point, these two things kind of come together. And I haven't always kind of planned that out from the beginning. So the knitted figure, to begin with, it was just a pair of legs. And then I realized it was going to be a full figure. And then I realized that it needed to have these ceramic balls that I'd been making separately, needed to come together onto the garment as well. So yeah, quite often it's like that, that I have sort of lots of things running alongside each other, and then at some point they just kind of yeah, come together.
The ceramic plate on the wall behind you actually is seems that it is in the same family as the knitted piece that you showed earlier. You're like, yeah, friends.
This is actually an addition. So for that piece, there was a bit of premeditation, I suppose, because I knew it was going to be a multiple object. So there was a bit of planning involved in that. So with ceramics, I'm often working in terms of scale. I'm working to the size of the kiln that I have. So that the plate, for example, there were some things about it that were kind of already decided, like the diameter had to be a certain diameter, and then I knew that I had a combination of glazes that I could work with. So there were certain kind of yeah, things kind of already in place, and then other things that happened whilst I was making it.
Is there a kiln behind you as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So that's
does anyone else? I've got another question here. Do you work on the pieces alone, or do you work on them with others?
So yeah, when I have opportunities to work with other people, with fabricators, I like to kind of explore that, because I think quite often I find that it brings something else to the work. So I'm not just working within my own limitations. And so just trying to think of any of the images we've seen. Yeah, so yeah, I think that kind of the translation of an idea via, you know, when you work with a fabricator, and what you started off thinking you were going to be doing, and then through kind of conversation and exchange, and kind of, as I say, realizing that there are more possibilities than you might have imagined, you know. So I find that, yeah, it's exciting when there's a chance to do so, then I will. But quite a lot of things I do make myself as well. So yeah, I think there's value in both for me.
Mm-hmm. Coco, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Really fascinating.
Thank you.
Wonderful to learn more about your work. Yeah. really, really wonderful. I hope that everyone has a great evening.